My search for answers to the mysteries of the Med starts here, in Turkey. The bridge between Europe and Asia. Istanbul is one of the world's greatest cities, the former capital of two great empires, first the Byzantine, then the Ottoman. Its rich cultural heritage and colourful street life attracts visitors from all over the world. But I've got a different agenda from your typical tourist.
As you know, Turkish carpets are beautiful.
I really don't want a carpet. Can't carry them. I'm looking for rocks, actually. That's quite nice.
Turkish tonight. Turkish Viagra.
Turkish Viagra.
Really?
I better not eat anymore.
Hold on.
If you're a tourist, then you'll be entranced by all the sights and sounds of this hustle and bustle. But if you're a geologist like me, then you'll be searching for clues to explain the region's turbulent geological history.
One of the jewels in Istanbul's crown is the Hagia Sophia, the Church of the Divine Wisdom. It's one of the greatest surviving examples of Byzantine architecture.
The building actually first started to be constructed at the end of 4th century AD.
For nearly 1,000 years, the Hagia Sophia was the largest enclosed space in the world.
All the minarets, there's an Arabic writing. It is Allah, the name of the God.
Hagia Sophia is a magnificent building with its dome basilica, its stunning mosaics and its beautiful columns. But sidestep the tourist throngs and you can find clues to what, for me, is a much more interesting story. Leaning columns, an arch that's been twisted, cracked, sunken floor.
And the massive dome has collapsed on at least 2 occasions. For a geologist, these are the telltale signs of the violent activity in the rocks below, which has menaced Hagia Sophia throughout its 1,500-year history. This remarkable building and the vast city of Istanbul sit right in the middle of a notorious earthquake zone. The threat of catastrophic disaster is a constant fear. The underlying forces which make Istanbul and regions of Turkey so vulnerable are exactly the same as those that make the rest of the Med so perilous. And I'm going to show you why.
Now, the Earth's surface is broken into a set of enormous plates, and they move around on a semi-molten mantle of hot rock beneath them. Now, the African plate has been grinding against the European plate for the last few million years, and stuck in the middle of both is poor old Turkey. Although these plates move roughly at the rates my fingernails grow, the forces involved are absolutely awesome. The thing about rocks moving together is they tend to get stuck. As they move, strain builds up until a critical point is reached, and then everything goes all together. And that is what causes an earthquake. Turkey actually has a giant cobweb of fault lines crisscrossing it, and I'm walking on one of them. On this side, this grassy bit here is soft sediment, but on this side is hard rock, and separating the two is a beautiful earthquake fault. Look, the block of rock that was once here has slid down this surface, creating these incredible scratches. These weren't made by human hands or a mechanical excavator. These are earthquake marks.
Millions of people in Turkey live under the threat of one of the most treacherous faults on the planet. It's the North Anatolian Fault, slicing through the top of the country for over 1,000 kilometres. in the last 100 years alone, there have been 11 major earthquakes along this fault line.
And one of the most devastating was in 1999, and it happened just down the road.
At 3 in the morning on August the 17th, a violent earthquake ripped apart the industrial city of Izmit. It lasted just 45 seconds, time enough to kill 25,000 people, injure 44,000, and damage or destroy nearly 300,000 homes. It was Turkey's most devastating earthquake in the last 60 years and caused movements along a 120-kilometre section of the North Anatolian Fault. Directly in its path was this petrol station.
And here, the North Anatolian Fault runs right beneath my feet. On this side, we've got the Turkish plate, and on this side, we've got the European plate. You see the front edge of this building here? Well, that was originally lined up with the edge of this building here. It's moved 1, 2, 3, 4.5 meters. And this line of pumps here was originally flush with this line of pumps here. And the quake has shifted it 1, 2, 3, 4.5 meters. And the edge of this forecourt here was flush with the edge here. So it has moved 1, 2, 3, 4.5 meters. Now the amazing thing was that under this one there's a petrol tank, and under this one there's a petrol tank. And the earthquake rupture ripped right between the two, a few meters either side, and this place would have been totally obliterated.
Although the worst may now be over for Izmit, the threat of similar devastation nearby is highly probable, because once a fault has ruptured, the stresses are transferred further along the fault line. And slap bang in the firing line, 56 kilometres to the west of Izmit, is a city of 15 million people, Istanbul. Ironically, the fault lines which threaten Istanbul have brought opportunities elsewhere. The huge network of cracks in the ground act as pathways for all kinds of stuff to rise to the surface. And it's not all bad. Pamukkale in southern Turkey is home to one of the most remarkable geological landscapes in the Mediterranean. It's a dazzling fairyland of bleached terraces which the Turks call Cotton Castle. Since Roman times, these mineral-rich waters have attracted visitors in search of good health. But Pamukkale hasn't always been so tranquil. None of this extraordinary landscape would be here if it wasn't for fault lines in the rocks below. The surrounding countryside is riddled with them.
I'm walking inside a giant crack in the Earth's surface. Deep below, the Earth is like a geological cooking pot. Below the Earth's crust, a semi-molten hot mantle is heating up ingredients like gas and minerals and water that want to get to the surface. And it's the pathways created by cracks like these that provide the escape route.
The land around Pamukkale is predominantly limestone and very porous, so when rain falls, it penetrates the rocks. Decaying plant material on the surface makes the rainwater acidic, So as it seeps underground, it carves channels through the limestone.
Eventually the water, which by now is saturated in the dissolved ingredients of limestone, is heated up by hot rocks below and forced back up to the surface. And it gets there by rising up through cracks and fault lines. This is where the water bubbles up to the surface from the rocks below. It comes out from these springs, it tumbles down the cliff, and then it spills out over this cascade of pools. It's absolutely fantastic.
As the water surges over the edge, the limestone is deposited on the terraces. This process has been going on for at least 14,000 years. And the spas of Pamukkale are as popular today as they were in Roman times.
These waters are absolutely laden with dissolved minerals, and they're supposed to be good for a whole range of problems. I mean, look at this here. Look, the minerals are things like calcium and magnesium. In gases, we've got stuff full of carbon dioxide, and down here, the waters are even radioactive. And in terms of the diseases that these waters are supposed to help, well, we've got obesity, we've got gastritis, we've even got constipation. I think I should get my trunks on.
Let's see what this is like. It's quite warm. Oh, this is beautiful. Do you think these waters are good for you?
Yeah, quite good.
You're feeling better?
Well, somewhat.
We are feeling younger, okay? And relaxing.
You're relaxing.
I was here 2 years ago, and my hair was silky,
So it makes
and my
you look-
skin was very soft.
Right. Do you not smell the water? Do you like that smell?
Like a water.
It smells a bit funny. It's got radioactivity, it says. It's very high in radioactivity.
I think it's very low radioactivity according to the table.
Right.
It's very low.
That makes me feel much better.
As I said before, cracks in the rock don't just bring up good stuff, they bring up bad stuff as well. And you don't have to look far to see the darker side of Pamukkale.
Near the spas of Pamukkale are the ruins of the ancient Roman city of Hierapolis, destroyed by a series of severe earthquakes.
This was one of the most sacred buildings in ancient Hierapolis, the temple to the god Apollo. After nearly 2,000 years and numerous earthquakes, very little of it survives. But a cave in which the temple foundations rest does survive, along with its ominous reputation. The cave was called the Plutonium, and it was a sacred shrine to Pluto, god of the dead and of the underworld. And the ancient Greeks thought that it led straight to hell.
Any living creature that entered the cave died instantly. It was a mystery to which geology holds the key.
Today, the cave lies behind this wall. Apparently in ancient times, it was impossible to see the floor of the cave because it was so thick with vapours. And this is a clue. This deadly cave was full of poisonous gas. And it still is. You can hear water and gas bubbling away. And that is why this is bricked up, so that nosy people like me don't get gassed. And where did all this gas come from? Well, as ever, from the rocks below. The water deep in the limestone is full of the poisonous gas carbon dioxide, which is picked up from that decayed plant material. In the rocks, pressure keeps the gas dissolved in liquid, just like the gas in this fizzy water. But when earthquakes open cracks in the rock, the liquid gas comes to the surface. And because it's not under pressure, it escapes into the air. That's fine if you're up here with plenty of oxygen to breathe. But if you're down there in Pluto's cave, it's another matter.
Once the deadly carbon dioxide was released from the rocks in the cave, it had nowhere to go. Heavier than air, it would have sat like a cloud, poisoning anyone who entered.
Of course, cracks in the earth are not just pathways for water and gas. I'm going to head south now to show you something else that passes up through faults to the Earth's surface. And it may hold the key to solving one of the Mediterranean's greatest mysteries.
Here in Jordan, on the fringes of the Med, the collision between the African and European plates has created an austere but stunning landscape. This region is the site of some of the most momentous events in biblical history. Many people believe that somewhere around here were the ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah.
The Old Testament tells us that God wiped both cities off the face of the earth in an apocalyptic act of vengeance because its inhabitants were just so wicked. It's a story so powerful that it's lasted for thousands of years. But is there any truth in it?
As a geologist, I'll be looking to the rocks for answers to the mystery. And there's no better place to start than the Dead Sea, where one rock in particular plays a crucial role in the story. The Dead Sea is one of the most remarkable tourist attractions in the Middle East. 400 metres below sea level, it's the lowest place on Earth. Here, the water is 6 times saltier than the world's oceans, which means it's incredibly difficult to swim. Fed by the Jordan River, the Dead Sea has no outlet, and over thousands of years the sun has evaporated the water, leaving behind a syrup of minerals. The sea is rich in chloride salts of sodium, magnesium, potassium and bromine. And the salt haze over the water filters out most of the sun's dangerous UVB rays, so tanning is much safer. And when you tire of sunbathing,
Is that the mud? Yeah.
you can always have a therapeutic massage.
Look at it. Looks like a mud.
Does it look okay? I don't look silly?
No.
How does that look? The unique properties of the Dead Sea are the direct result of the massive forces constantly at work beneath our feet.
It lies in the Rift Valley, the meeting point between two great tectonic plates. That's the African one over there, and this is the Arabian one. And they're slowly moving apart from each other. As a result of this plate movement, the Earth's crust around here has been stretched thin, causing the area of the Dead Sea to sink down. This instability causes earthquakes and fault lines. Look, across there is a fault line. See those purple rocks on the left? If you trace the top of them across, when it gets to the fault line, it drops down by 4 to 5 metres. That drop would have been caused by several big earthquakes. And that's exactly what's happening out there in the Dead Sea. If Sodom and Gomorrah really existed in this part of the world, then the geology here confirms that they would have been vulnerable to earthquakes. Quakes here were big enough to have left the cities partly destroyed, but not annihilated as the Old Testament claims. We need to search for something that's more than just shaky ground, something catastrophic.
Today it's tourists who float happily on the surface of the Dead Sea. Millions of years ago, you'd have seen something far more curious. The seabed was a mass of chemical compounds formed from decayed plant material and animal matter. When earthquakes opened up cracks in the seabed, compounds were released, and one of them was especially valued.
It came up like this. Asphalt. In biblical times, it must have seemed like a gift from the gods. It was really useful stuff. Long before the invention of cement, asphalt was used to put stone blocks together. It was great for throwing up buildings. But one of its most valuable uses was as a waterproofing agent. This bucket's got a nasty leak in it. Let's see what asphalt can do.
Ooh, that's cooking nicely. It's gas mark 5, but to be honest, I wouldn't try this at home.
Okay, let's see if it works. Hey! 100% waterproof. Well, almost. Now, if you lived on these shores thousands of years ago, you probably wouldn't have needed to repair too many buckets. But asphalt would have been great if you wanted to waterproof your boat.
Asphalt was then so abundant that the Dead Sea was often referred to as Lake Asphaltites. It was so valuable that it was widely traded and even turned up as far away as ancient Egypt, but it was used in the mummification process. These days, asphalt seldom appears. The last major sighting was in 1969, when a 2-metre-long slab bobbed to the surface, weighing more than a tonne. In biblical times, a block this size would have been worth a fortune.
So if Sodom and Gomorrah were here, it's highly probable that trading in asphalt would have been a major source of income. And the best place for enterprising traders to live would have been here at the water's edge, but it was easier to gather the huge blocks bobbing up to the surface. And that was the problem, because the land here is susceptible to a process called liquefaction, which was when the ground beneath your feet turns to liquid. And now we are talking catastrophe. Now the land down by the shoreline is saturated with water, but it's holding my weight. But if it gets shaken during an earthquake in the rocks below, then the vibrations cause the sand grains to part, causing water to come to the surface and turning the ground into liquid. Well, not much of an earthquake, but what should happen is the land turns to quicksand. Oh, that's not bad. Look.
Now imagine if there were whole communities here, especially if the houses were built on slopes leading to the shore. They would have slid into the water and down to the bottom of the sea. So the geology of the Dead Sea could account for earthquakes and liquefaction. But what about the final part of the puzzle? The fire and brimstone mentioned in the Bible. The fault lines which provided the pathways for asphalt might explain this too. As well as being famous for its salt waters and mineral-rich mud, the Dead Sea offers visitors another treat: bathing in hot natural springs. And when I say hot, I mean it.
Oh! Ow! Hi! Us! Ah! It's so hot! See, Jack? These guys are mad! This is really hot water that's bubbling up through these cracks. Deep down below my feet, there's gas. It's highly flammable methane. The seismic activity has created the cracks and the methane gas is rising to the surface. And all it takes is a few bolts of lightning and you've got your fire and brimstone. Earthquakes, liquefaction and exploding gases. A geological explanation for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah seems reasonable enough. But does it really prove that the two cities existed? To be honest, we're really not sure. And probably definitive proof only lies out there, in the depths of the Dead Sea.
What we do know is that as well as asphalt, the seismic activity in the region produced something of even greater value, which was to revolutionise the fortunes of those living here.
In 1997, archaeologists working here in southern Jordan made a remarkable discovery. They uncovered an ancient village that dated back to the early Bronze Age, roughly 5,500 years ago.
At its heart were the remains of a huge copper factory, the largest ever discovered in the Middle East. Beneath the rubble were hundreds of copper ingots and casting moulds for tools like chisels and axes. But why was the factory here at this remote spot? The surrounding rocks reveal the answer.
600 million years ago, semi-molten rocks deep beneath my feet heated up water. And as that water travelled up through cracks towards the Earth's surface, it gathered up tiny specks of copper from the surrounding rocks. As it got near the surface, the water cooled, and it deposited the copper in the earthquake cracks, forming thick veins of the stuff. Isn't it brilliant?
These rocks contain malachite, a copper ore, and the workers would have used furnaces to extract the copper from the rocks. The vast amount of slag or coal waste found littering the site indicates that the factory must have been producing copper on an industrial scale. The lives of the inhabitants, who had previously led a nomadic, pastoral life, must have been transformed by this gift from the rocks. But copper wasn't the only metal released by earthquake activity. Throughout the Med, man began to exploit a whole range of other minerals, one of which held a deadly secret. Every year, millions of visitors flock to Rome, attracted by the charms of the Eternal City. With its vibrant street life, seductive shops, fantastic food, and rich cultural history, Italy's capital is a tourist's paradise.
I'd like to see the best of Rome, please.
Among Rome's most popular attractions are its ancient monuments, reminders of its fabled past as the greatest civilization the world has ever known. For 500 years, the Romans dominated the Mediterranean and beyond. At its height, the empire stretched from Scotland to the African deserts. But in 476 AD, the emperor was deposed and the barbarians took over. Rome was transformed from a bustling city of millions into a provincial town of a few thousand.
Historians have put forward many reasons for the decline and fall of what was once the most powerful empire in the world. But as a geologist, I've got a theory that the empire was brought to its knees by this rock.
Let's see if anyone agrees with my theory.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Yeah. Do you speak English? What caused the collapse of the Roman Empire? Why did it all end?
Decadence, too much excessive.
Ooh, that sounds good. How does that kill you? I don't understand.
You know what that means?
Yeah, I think I know what that means. No. I know what that means.
Should I give it in plain English?
I wasn't sure when I was...
Sorry?
No. A little bit of English?
A little bit, but
No. Come back. No. I just... It's one quick question. Roman Empire. Collapse. Why?
There was a big earthquake.
Big earthquake.
I think so.
It was the barbarians, it was the Germans.
There was a huge hole on the ground and I think it just went down.
Just collapsed, didn't it?
Economic collapse, emperors enjoying themselves too much, spending too much money.
It's a pretty big empire, though.
Yeah, it was a big earthquake too.
Right.
They tried to conquer Britain, but they ran out of legions. That was ages before it actually collapsed.
It was like a storm of earthquakes.
I think so.
Wow.
Like many put together.
Yeah, and it just all
of it.
That's interesting. That's what I'm looking for, geology reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks then.
Yep.
Bye.
Time to ask a genuine Roman.
You're the perfect man to ask a question. I'm trying to find out what caused the collapse of the Roman Empire.
Romano. Romanos.
Yes. Collapse.
Roma.
Collapso. Collapso Roman Empire. Perché?
Perché?
Perché collapso?
Perché la gente è matta. Pazzi.
Oh.
Pazzia.
I don't know. What this? Some interesting answers, but none of them came up with what I think might be a major culprit. Andiamo. This rock is called lead sulfide, and it's a source of one of the most toxic of all metals, lead. If lead gets into your body, it can cause sterility in men and infertility in women. It can also cause an increased likelihood of stillbirth and miscarriage. And when it gets to your brain, it can cause major neurological damage, including imbecility, hyperactivity, and senility. The trouble is, the Romans were infatuated with it.
Lead was fantastically useful in Imperial Rome. It was readily available, inexpensive, easy to mine, smelt and work, and very resistant to corrosion. So when the Romans built their lavish public and private baths, lead was the metal of choice for the miles of water piping.
Now, with all that lead plumbing and public baths, wouldn't the Roman bathers have been at risk? But there's no evidence that bathing in lead-contaminated waters is dangerous. So what about drinking it?
Rome today is dotted with water fountains, over 3,500 of them. And in ancient Rome, it was no different.
The water would have travelled along lead pipes, so it's reasonable to assume that if you drank it regularly, you would have exposed yourself to lead poisoning. A neat theory, but not one supported by geology.
Much of the water which supplied Rome was sourced from springs in the countryside as much as 80 kilometres away. To bring the water into the city, Roman engineers built these magnificent aqueducts.
Now, the spring water came up through limestone, and so it was high in calcium. This created limescale, the same stuff that furs up kettles, and which acted as a protective coating on the inside of the lead pipes. And another protective factor was the sheer abundance of water in Rome.
The Romans didn't have much use for taps. Piped water would gush into fountains and basins, and then overflow into the gutters, and with typical Roman efficiency, flush out the sewers.
So if water didn't lead to lead poisoning, what did? The relentless pursuit of la dolce vita, the good life.
The Italians' passionate enthusiasm for the good things in life is legendary. Here in Rome, the sense of chic is everywhere. And few things are more important to the Italians than eating well.
5 different types of tomato. Do you eat these?
Sì, mangiare.
Flowers. What's this?
Trippa.
Tripe. Stomach. Oh, gosh. I didn't really like figs, but this is beautiful. Okay. Molto grazie. Ciao. Thank you.
But in Imperial Rome, a desire for fine food went way beyond normal appetites.
Upper-class Romans loved their food and drink to such an extent that they became notorious for gluttony and drunkenness. And this is where the lead poisoning argument really begins to take hold.
The ruling classes drank hugely, anything from 1.5 to 5 litres of wine a day. And what's more, the wine was likely to be contaminated by a deadly additive.
To enhance the colour, sweetness and bouquet of wine, as well as to stop it turning sour, winemakers adulterated it with a sweet aromatic syrup called sapa. Now, sapa is just unfermented grape juice boiled down into a concentrate. But the problem was that the pots the winemakers used to boil the juice in were made of lead. Grape juice is very acidic and the acid dissolves the lead, so the syrup or sapa had a very high lead content. And that is how lead got into wine, with deadly consequences for our wine-guzzling Romans.
As well as poisoning themselves with their excessive drinking, the Roman aristos' love of fine food was also getting them into trouble. The deadly additive sapa wasn't just used in wine. It played a major role in the kitchen as a sweetener in sauces and seasonings.
Ciao, Luigi. How are you?
I'm fine, you?
Great. Now that you've got the steak, so we're ready to roll. It says that we need pepper.
I've asked top chef Luigi Bergeretto to recreate one of the most popular dishes in ancient Rome using the original recipe.
Oregano.
That's beautiful.
He's going to cook me a beefsteak in a succulent sweet and sour sauce.
Raisins, which I see there, honey.
The ingredients are surprisingly familiar, but I'm going to draw the line at total authenticity.
Brilliant. Yeah. There's 2 other ingredients in here, which is causing a bit of concern. One of them is wine, which we know was contaminated with lead in Roman times. Have we got some
You have
wine?
some wine here?
Now, is there lead in this?
No, it's lead-free.
It's lead-free, is it? Because I know that the Romans used to have tons of lead in their wine. So I was a bit worried.
Not now.
Well, the other thing is this reduced must, which is that deadly grape juice cooked up in the lead pots. Sapa?
This one.
Is this a
yes,
sapa?
This is sapa, and still is used in Sardinia.
Right, Sardinia. But was that cooked with lead pots?
No, not now.
So I'm not going to get lead poisoning from your kitchen, Luigi. Excellent. Have you cooked it before?
Not this recipe, really.
Okay.
I believe that I can do it because I'm Roman as well, so I know the feeling of the ancient Romans.
The deadly sapa featured in many recipes, and lead would have also been present in cups and plates, as well as pots and pans.
Lead was even in cosmetics. Fashionable Roman women were into the white look, so they put powdered white lead on their faces. Ah, look at this. Let's see what it's like. That looks fantastic. That is beautiful. That's never 2,000-year-old meat. So, with wine and food and even makeup, lead was everywhere in ancient Rome. It's reckoned that an upper-class Roman absorbed about 20 milligrams of lead per day.
More than enough to give anyone chronic lead poisoning within weeks. In 1st century Rome, there were already ominous warning signs. The Roman upper classes were failing to reproduce.
Each generation being perhaps a quarter of the previous one. It got so serious that they brought in special laws to grant privileges to fathers with 3 or more children and to penalise childless aristocrats. Now, sterility and infertility can both be symptoms of lead poisoning, and lead might also explain the bizarre behaviour of some of the emperors. For instance, it's rumoured that Claudius was a mentally unbalanced glutton who was constantly slobbering and shaking. Caligula was a chronic alcoholic who married his sister, made his horse a consul, turned his palace into a brothel, and killed innocent citizens on a whim. But the most feared for his eccentricities and fits of violence was him, Nero, a psychotic monster who poisoned his brother and murdered his mum. With a series of deranged emperors and a severe breeding crisis among the aristocracy, I reckon there's enough evidence to suggest that lead definitely played a part in the decline of the greatest civilization the world has ever known.
In my geological tour of the Med, the rocks have provided answers to some tantalising questions, but there's one final mystery I want to solve. As before, it revolves around materials coming to the surface via cracks in the ground. But this time, we're talking about something far more terrifying than lead. It's when molten rock itself, the magma, breaks through the Earth's crust. It's the stuff of Hollywood disaster movies. This is the Greek island of Santorini in the southern Aegean, one of the most turbulent regions on Earth. Santorini and its smaller neighbours are all that remains of what was once one large island. 4,000 years ago, it had its heart ripped out by a devastating volcanic eruption. A massive chunk of the island collapsed beneath the waves, creating a deep crater which the sea rushed in to fill. The legacy of this catastrophe is a spectacular landscape which has made Santorini the most popular of all the Greek islands. But I'm not here for volcanic beaches or beautiful sunsets. I'm on a quest for the answers to the baffling mystery which the eruption also left behind. And once again, the answer lies in the rocks.
We all know the story of Pompeii in Italy, buried under a thick layer of volcanic ash when Mount Vesuvius erupted. In 2 minutes, inhabitants before they could flee. Well, here in Santorini, the town of Akrotiri in the south of the island was, just like Pompeii, buried in ash and preserved for posterity.
When archaeologists unearthed Akrotiri from its 10-metre thick blanket of ash, they discovered a time capsule of a lost world. But astonishingly, unlike Pompeii, there were no bodies buried beneath the rubble. So how did its inhabitants manage to escape before the eruption?
They were saved by the rocks, the very ones that fell on them. And these are the rocks that did it.
The story begins with the formation of islands like Santorini about 1.5 million years ago. Back then, the geological processes in the Mediterranean were much the same as they are today.
The African plate was moving northwest at a speed of about 4 to 5 centimetres a year, and it was sinking underneath the Aegean plate. This had been going on for about 15 million years, pushing the tip of the African plate, just here, down to a depth of 130 kilometres.
Down at that depth, the heat and pressure are enough to generate molten rock. And because the Mediterranean is an earthquake zone, there are plenty of faults for the red-hot magma to use as pathways to the surface.
When it got there 1.5 million years ago, it created volcanoes like Santorini.
At the time of the eruption in 1628 BC, Santorini was a flourishing trading post for the Minoans, a cultured Greek-speaking people whose main base was the island of Crete, 100 kilometres to the south. The excavations at Akrotiri reveal a highly sophisticated society, living in 3-storey houses, fitted with plumbing and decorated with murals and frescoes. Many of the rooms showed signs of earthquake damage, a warning that a major volcanic eruption might be imminent. But it was clear that the people of Akrotiri had ignored these signs and stayed on to rebuild their damaged city. Pots of plaster and paint lay abandoned in the partly decorated rooms. So if the eruption came as a surprise, what explains the absence of bodies? The answer lies once again in the rocks.
This is soil from an ancient land surface that the people of Akrotiri lived on before the eruption. And this is a layer of rock that was blasted out at the start of the eruption 3,500 years ago. It's made of pumice, which is formed by molten lava that's full of trapped air bubbles, and that gives it all these holes. And that makes it incredibly light. Now, the first pumice to be thrown out by the eruption was this yellow band here. The colour is really significant because it tells us that the rock is oxidised. In other words, the pumice had lain on the land surface, unburied and exposed to the atmosphere for at least a few weeks. Time enough to give warning to the people of Akrotiri. This light showering of pumice was a heck of a wake-up call.
Thanks to this early warning, the villagers escaped before the final deadly blast. This would explain the absence of objects of value in the ruins of Akrotiri. The fleeing townsfolk took their most prized possessions with them.
A couple of months after this first thin scattering of pumice, the volcano erupted out the really nasty stuff. Within a matter of hours, this 3-metre thick layer of pumice had rained down. Over the next 4 days, this 50-metre thick blanket of ash and pumice covered the whole island. In the best Hollywood disaster films, just when you think it's safe to get back in the water, there's some terrifying twist. Well, the exact same thing happened here. The volcano had a deadly trick up its sleeve. When the volcano erupted, the outpouring of magma created an enormous chamber deep in the rocks, which in the end couldn't hold the weight of the island. The chamber collapsed and the centre of the volcano sank beneath the waves, with a crash that must have been heard throughout the Aegean.
Across the Aegean and Crete, the Minoans escaped the immediate effects of the blast. But some scholars believe that they were the victims of its deadly aftermath.
The collapse of the volcano probably caused a powerful sea wave or tsunami They travel at up to 800 kilometers an hour, and when they hit shallow coastal waters, they rise up into huge walls of water, up to 30 meters high.
The tsunami would have pounded across into Crete, causing widespread flooding and devastation. Within just a few decades, the Minoan civilization had gone into terminal decline.
Did the volcanic catastrophe here on Santorini deliver a death blow to the Minoans? It's a fascinating whodunit, and the jury is still out. Porcelaine. Yes.
Santorini is a living, breathing volcano. Just under 300 years ago, a blink of an eye in geological time, eruptions caused the seafloor to rise to the surface and form a new island in the crater. It's known as Nea Kameni, New Burnt Island.
Its most recent eruption was in 1950, so it hasn't finished yet. It all looks so tranquil now, but this is the centre of the blast that ripped apart the island of Santorini 3,500 years ago. But all this lava is modern, created in the last 200 years. Thank you.
Follow the path, they're going up the top.
It just goes up, does it? All right, I should be able to do that. Excellent. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Look at this. Keep the volcano clean. Okay.
As I said at the beginning, we take our Mediterranean holidays in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Are we mad?
Hi. Is it far?
Yes.
No?
Very far.
Is it good?
Yes, perfect.
Are you not a bit worried that this is a volcano?
It is, yes.
You're walking on a volcano.
Want to see it?
You're crazy. I'm glad you're not worried.
Now, what do you want to hear? No, of course not.
No, I just like to see people having fun on volcanoes. See you. Bye, thanks. Hi there. Are you not worried about this, being on a volcano?
No, it won't eruption.
But look, over there, there's some steam coming out.
Yeah, we saw that from distance.
You don't think there's a risk here?
No.
So no one's worried that you're standing on a volcano?
More dangerous coming down that road in the bus.
So you don't feel you're taking a risk by trundling up here and...
Oh, no, they didn't get us to sign anything that says we're in danger, so I reckon they know.
Do you like taking risks?
Sure.
So do you think this is taking a risk?
No.
No. So this is how far in your risk table of 1 to 10 is walking up an active volcano and standing in the crater?
2.
2? And what is it 3 then? What's more risky?
A bubbly volcano, I guess.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Right, thanks then.
Thanks.
Bye. Everyone feels happy on a volcano. It must be the fumes. The truth is, if and when this volcano starts to erupt again, we'll probably know about it. The stinking gases will get worse, the land will start to rise, and earthquakes will begin to pop off. The same warning signals that alerted the locals 3,500 years ago.
But until then, visitors will continue to flock to Santorini and its infant volcano, despite the knowledge that they're flirting with danger. In my tour of the Med, I've seen how cracks in the earth have blessed the region with mineral wealth but cursed it with natural disasters. But these cracks have also offered solutions to some baffling mysteries. Later in this series, I'll show you other ways in which geology has influenced the civilizations of the Med. I'll reveal how rocks were behind the reason the Egyptians built triangles, the Greeks squares, and the Romans perfect circles. I'll look at how art through the ages owes its colours to the rocks, from the paintings of our Stone Age ancestors to the Impressionists and beyond. And I'll be looking at salt. You may see it as something you just stick on your fish and chips. Delicious. But to me as a geologist, it means war, death, and the end of the world as we know it. It's not all depressing though.
Hey, whoa.
Don't forget there's also a good side to rocks.
And there's more next Monday at 7. Tonight, the dramatised diaries of 4 ordinary people who posted their jottings about life and love after the war to the Mass Observation Project. Richard Bryars and Sarah Parrish in Our Hidden Lives at 9. And there's a sneak preview coming up. But stay with us now for The World, next.
For further information on Open University programmes, please go to open2.net.